There's something that happens to men after 40 that almost nobody talks about, honestly. And it's not what you think. It's not age. It's not willpower. It's not even stress, at least not entirely. What's actually happening is something much more specific, something physical, something measurable. And once you understand it, a lot of things start to make sense. If you've ever felt like your body just stopped responding the way it used to, in the gym, in your relationship, in your energy levels throughout the day, this video is going to give you a completely different way of looking at that. Not with fear, with understanding. Because the moment you understand what's actually going on inside your body, you stop blaming yourself and you start making smarter decisions. Stay with me for the next few minutes, because what you're about to hear could genuinely change how you approach your health for the rest of your life. And one simple habit may influence this more than most men realize. Let's start with a scenario that a lot of men recognize, even if they've never said it out loud. You're in your early to mid-40s, maybe a little past that. Life is busy, work is demanding, you're holding things together, but somewhere along the way, something shifted. You started waking up tired, even after a full night of sleep. Exercise that used to feel energizing started feeling like something you had to push through. And in moments that used to come naturally, intimate moments, moments that used to define a certain kind of confidence, there was hesitation, a pause that wasn't there before, a pressure you couldn't explain, and the silence that followed, that quiet moment of confusion, maybe even embarrassment. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. And you also know that it doesn't just stay in the bedroom. That feeling, that sense of losing something you didn't even realize you had, it bleeds into everything. Into how you carry yourself, into how you talk to your partner, into how you show up at work, into how you look at yourself in the mirror in the morning. Most men never say this out loud, but internally, the thought is there. I'm not who I used to be. That thought is heavier than it sounds. And here's what most men never realize. It's not a character flaw. It's not weakness. It's biology. And more specifically, it's something happening in your blood vessels right now that most men have no idea is occurring. Here's where we need to talk about something most health content completely ignores. Inside your blood vessels, there is a molecule, a small, simple molecule that your body produces naturally. It's called nitric oxide. And for most of your life, your 20s, your 30s, your body made enough of it without any effort. You didn't have to think about it. It just worked. But here's what many researchers and health experts are now observing. As men age past 40, the body's ability to produce and maintain healthy nitric oxide levels begins to change. And this isn't just a minor inconvenience. This molecule does something critical. It signals the smooth muscle cells inside your blood vessels to relax, to expand, to allow blood to flow freely. Think of your circulatory system like a network of pipes. When everything is working well, those pipes are wide open. Blood moves easily. Oxygen and nutrients reach every part of your body efficiently. Your heart doesn't have to work as hard. Your muscles recover faster. Your brain gets what it needs. And yes, every part of your body that depends on healthy blood flow gets what it needs. Now imagine those pipes slowly becoming narrower. Not dramatically, not overnight, just gradually, year by year, slowly enough that you don't even notice at first, but consistently enough that over time, the difference becomes undeniable. That's what reduced nitric oxide availability can do. And what's interesting, and this is the part most men never hear about, is that this process is not inevitable in the way we've been led to believe. Researchers have noticed something interesting when studying vascular health in men over 40. The decline in nitric oxide production isn't purely about aging. It's about a combination of factors, many of which are influenced by the choices we make every day without realizing it. Diet plays a role. Stress plays a role. Sleep quality plays a role. Even the way modern food is processed affects how well your body can synthesize this molecule. Here's a specific example. One of the primary ways your body produces nitric oxide is through an amino acid called L-arginine. Your body uses L-arginine as a direct precursor, a raw material, to manufacture nitric oxide in the lining of your blood vessels. Now, L-arginine is found in certain foods, red meat, nuts, legumes, some dairy, But here's what the research suggests. By the time many men are in their 40s and 50s, the efficiency of this conversion process has decreased. The enzyme responsible for turning L-arginine into nitric oxide, an enzyme called ENOS, becomes less active. And this changes everything, because even if you're eating reasonably well, your body may be extracting less from what you consume. Less nitric oxide, less vascular relaxation, less blood flow to the areas that need it most. And over months, sometimes years, the effects compound. This is where things start to get interesting and a little more personal. When blood flow is consistently reduced, even subtly, the effects aren't limited to one area of the body. Men often notice it first in their workout recovery. They push hard in the gym and feel fine in the moment, but the next day, their muscles feel heavier than they used to. Soreness lingers longer. That sharp, clean energy after a good session, it's just not there the way it was at 32. They might notice it in their focus. That mental clarity that used to be automatic, the ability to sit down and concentrate without drifting, without feeling like there's a fog sitting just behind the eyes. And then in private moments, they notice it most clearly. Because sexual function is, in many ways, one of the most sensitive indicators of cardiovascular health in men. Not the only indicator, but a very honest one. When blood flow is reduced systemically, this area of function is often among the first to reflect that change. And remember that molecule we mentioned earlier, nitric oxide? This is exactly where its role becomes most significant. The physiological process behind a healthy erection is fundamentally a vascular event. It requires relaxation of smooth muscle tissue. It requires rapid, adequate blood flow. It requires nitric oxide to initiate that process. When nitric oxide availability is reduced, this process becomes less reliable, less consistent. And that inconsistency is what men experience as hesitation, as pressure, as a loss of confidence that slowly reshapes how they think about themselves. This isn't a moral issue. It isn't about desire or attraction or commitment. It is a plumbing issue, and plumbing can be supported. But here's something most men completely overlook. The conversation around men's health, especially in this area, tends to jump straight to pharmaceutical solutions. And those solutions exist for a reason. They work for many men. But what they do is treat a symptom, not a system. They don't address why nitric oxide availability has declined. They don't support the underlying vascular health. They provide a short-term response to a long-term process. And for many men, that's not enough. Because what they actually want isn't just a fix for one moment. They want to feel like themselves again, consistently, reliably, in every part of their life. And this is where the science around natural vascular support becomes genuinely compelling. Because in the last 2 decades, researchers have made significant progress understanding how the body's nitric oxide system can be supported, not replaced, not forced, but genuinely supported through specific compounds that work with your biology. Let's talk about a few of these compounds specifically, not as a shopping list, but as an explanation of how they work, because understanding the mechanism matters. The first is L-citrulline. Now, I mentioned L-arginine earlier as the primary precursor to nitric oxide, and that's accurate. But here's what's fascinating about L-citrulline. It's actually more effective at raising L-arginine levels in the blood than L-arginine itself. That sounds counterintuitive. How can the precursor's precursor be more effective? The reason is absorption. When you consume L-arginine directly, a significant portion of it is broken down in the intestinal tract before it ever reaches the bloodstream. The enzyme responsible for this breakdown is called arginase. And arginase is quite active in the gut. L-citrulline, however, bypasses this degradation. It's absorbed more efficiently, and once it reaches the kidneys, it's converted into L-arginine and released directly into the bloodstream, at much higher concentrations than direct L-arginine supplementation typically achieves. This is why many researchers focused on vascular health have shifted their attention toward L-citrulline as a supporting compound. Studies have explored its relationship to blood pressure, to exercise performance, to recovery, and the results consistently point to the same mechanism: improved nitric oxide availability, which supports healthy blood flow. And this is where things get more nuanced. Because L-citrulline doesn't work in isolation. The body's nitric oxide system is influenced by multiple pathways, and one of the most well-studied involves a compound that's been used in traditional medicine for thousands of years, though modern research is now giving us a much clearer picture of why it works. Panax ginseng. Specifically, the ginsenosides, the active compounds within Panax ginseng, have been studied extensively for their effects on ENOS activity. Remember, ENOS? The enzyme responsible for producing nitric oxide in the blood vessel lining. Ginsenosides appear to support ENOS function to help activate and sustain the enzyme's activity, which directly supports the body's own production of nitric oxide. What's particularly interesting is that ginsenosides have been studied not just in isolation, but in combination with other compounds, and the research suggests a synergistic effect, meaning the compounds working together may produce a greater effect than any single compound alone. This is consistent with how the body actually works. Human physiology isn't driven by single variables. It's a system of interconnected processes, and supporting that system means providing multiple inputs, not just one. Now here's the part that most men don't consider, and it's important. Even if you're eating a relatively healthy diet, getting these specific compounds in therapeutic amounts through food alone is extremely difficult. L-citrulline is found primarily in watermelon, but to reach the amount studied in clinical research, you would need to consume an impractical volume of it daily. Panax ginseng is not a common dietary staple in Western eating patterns. And even for the foods that do contain relevant precursors, modern agricultural practices and food processing have reduced the nutritional density of what we eat compared to several decades ago. This is not a critique of healthy eating. Eating well matters enormously, but for specific compounds targeting a specific physiological process, especially as we age and absorption efficiency naturally decreases, the gap between what food provides and what the body needs can become significant. And this is where consistent, targeted supplementation becomes a practical consideration rather than an optional luxury. In a moment, I want to bring this all together because I want to make sure you leave this video with a clear picture of not just what's happening, but what you can actually do about it. But first, let's talk about something that often gets overlooked in these conversations: the timeline. The changes we've been discussing don't happen overnight, and they don't reverse overnight either. That's both the frustrating part and the hopeful part. Frustrating because there's no instant fix. Hopeful because it means the body is genuinely responsive to consistent support over time. What researchers observe is that vascular health, and nitric oxide availability specifically, responds to sustained input. Not a single dose, not a 2-week experiment, but a consistent, ongoing approach to giving the body what it needs to maintain healthy function. Men who take this approach seriously, who combine targeted nutritional support with improvements in sleep, stress management, and physical activity, often report noticing changes gradually. Not a dramatic transformation in week 1, but over weeks and months, a quiet recalibration, more energy in the mornings, easier recovery after exercise, greater confidence in intimate moments. A feeling that's hard to describe precisely, but most men describe it as feeling more like themselves, more present, more capable, more in control. That feeling of control is significant, because for a lot of men, what gets lost isn't just physical function. It's the psychological sense of being the version of yourself you know you can be. And when that comes back, even partially, even gradually, it changes how you move through the world. And remember what we talked about at the beginning, that thought that sits quietly in the back of a man's mind after enough of these experiences accumulate. I'm not who I used to be. Here's what the science suggests. That may not be the full story. What you're experiencing may be less about who you are and more about what your body has been missing. And the difference between those two things is enormous. One is a conclusion, the other is a starting point. Let's take a step back and look at the full picture of what we've covered. After 40, the body's production of nitric oxide, the molecule responsible for vascular relaxation and healthy blood flow, begins to change. This affects energy, exercise performance, cognitive clarity, and intimate function. The mechanism involves reduced ENOS activity and less efficient conversion of amino acid precursors. This is not purely about aging. It's about a complex interaction between biology, diet, absorption efficiency, and lifestyle. Certain compounds, L-citrulline, L-arginine, and Panax ginseng among them, have been studied for their ability to support this system naturally. Not to replace what the body does, but to provide the inputs the body needs to do it more effectively. And because these compounds are difficult to obtain in effective amounts through diet alone, especially for men over 40, whose absorption and conversion efficiency has decreased, consistent supplementation is a practical and evidence-informed approach. This is not about finding a shortcut. It's about understanding your body well enough to give it what it actually needs, and acting on that understanding consistently. For men who want to explore a natural way to support this process, there's a resource available in the description below. It's not a sales pitch. It's a place to start if you want to take the next step with real information behind it. What I'll say is this: the men who tend to see the most meaningful improvements are the ones who approach this as a system, not a single solution. They look at sleep, they look at movement, they look at stress, and they look at targeted nutritional support as one piece of a larger picture. That holistic approach, that willingness to take your health seriously across multiple dimensions, is what separates men who reclaim their vitality from men who simply accept decline as inevitable. You don't have to accept it as inevitable. That's really the core message of everything we've talked about today. Your body is not broken. It is responding to conditions, and conditions can be changed slowly, consistently, intelligently. Conditions can be changed. The confidence you felt at 35 isn't gone. The energy that made you feel sharp and capable isn't permanently out of reach. The intimacy and connection you want in your relationship, the version of you that shows up fully in that space, that version of you is not a memory. It's a possibility, one that your biology can support if you give it what it needs. This is what it means to take ownership of your health after 40. Not chasing youth, not fighting biology, but understanding it and working with it intelligently, consistently, with patience and commitment, because you've earned the right to feel good, to feel strong, to feel like the man you know yourself to be. If you found this helpful and this video gave you a new perspective on your health, subscribe for daily content on men's vitality after 40. Drop a comment below. What's the one change you're going to make first? And if you know a man who needs to hear this, share this video with him.